Texas was once a force in college football. Under Mack Brown, Texas was consistently good and playing in New Year's Six bowls. It's been a while since then, but it's looking like maybe Texas is back. All eyes are on Texas football, and really their backup quarterback, Arch Manning. But outside of him, the Longhorns have a really good team, and the program is slowly starting to turn itself around. Texas is entering year 3 under Steve Sarkisian. In 2021, the Longhorns actually had some pretty high expectations. They started the year ranked 21st and even beat number 23 Louisiana in their season opener. It looked like they were going to be a solid team, and then it just all fell apart. Texas had a stretch where they lost 6 straight and ended up finishing the season 5-7. The starting quarterback that season was Casey Thompson, and he was solid, 2,100 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. He had already been on the roster for 2 seasons prior under Tom Herman. Herman is now the head coach at Florida Atlantic, and his starting quarterback this season is, Casey Thompson. Thompson was at Nebraska last season, but wasn't really that great. He actually ended up transferring from Texas because Quinn Ewers decided to transfer in. Ewers was the number 1 player in the 2021 class, but he ended up going to Ohio State. Then, after just 1 season and 2 snaps later, Ewers hopped in the portal and headed to Austin. That immediately made Texas a bit more interesting. And after a Week 1 blowout win over Louisiana Monroe, it set up an interesting Week 2 game. Alabama at Texas. Steve Sarkisian was the offensive coordinator for the Crimson Tide in 2019 and 2020, so really it was his return, and Texas put up a good fight, but ultimately they lost in the end 20-19 thanks to a late field goal. Chances are the Longhorns actually find a way to win that game if Quinn Ewers didn't break his collarbone in literally the first quarter. That pushed Hudson Card into the starting role, and he played pretty well. He had 6 touchdowns and 2 interceptions over a 3-game span while Ewers was out. Texas then beat UTSA and West Virginia, but fell to Texas Tech in overtime in between. Quinn Ewers finally returned, and in the game he came back, Texas beat the living crap out of Oklahoma 49-0. Now, the Sooners didn't have Dylan Gabriel, so that is important, but it was the most points Texas has ever scored in the Red River rivalry. Texas followed it up with a win over Iowa State, and then had 3 ranked tough matchups. They did lose to Oklahoma State by 7, but followed it up with a 7-point victory over Kansas State. Then the next week, they lost to TCU by, you guessed it, 7. Heading into the game, TCU was number 4 and Texas was 18, their highest ranking of the season. Then, to close out the regular season, Texas beat Kansas and Baylor. They ended up playing in the Alamo Bowl, but ended up losing by a touchdown to Michael Penix in Washington. That 2022 Texas team put the Longhorns in the right direction. And I think the biggest thing is that we finally got to see Ewers play, which was definitely long awaited. He ended up passing for 2,200 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions in just 10 games. Ewers should be even better this season, at least theoretically. Texas did lose probably the best player on their entire roster, Bijan Robinson. He was taken 8th at the draft by the Falcons, and he was just straight up insane. I mean, he was even really good as a freshman, but his junior year was the one to remember. 1,580 yards and 18 touchdowns. Robinson was a unanimous All-American, and more importantly, was one of the most exciting players in the country. He's gone now, and that leaves a massive hole, but luckily for Texas, their number 1 wide receiver is still in town, Xavier Worthy. He was actually the Big 12 Freshman of the Year in Sark's first year at Texas. He ended up having almost an 1,000-yard year and scored 12 touchdowns. Then 2022 was a bit less, 780 yards and 9 touchdowns, but he was still really good and was second team All Big 12. For Ewers to have that number 1 wideout connection established going into year 2, it should just be massive for him. Veteran Jordan Whittington is back too. He's been around for a while, so this will be his 5th year with the Longhorns. In 2022, he was an All Big 12 honorable mention after he had 650 yards. The other interesting name to keep an eye on in that wide receiver group is A.D. Mitchell. He's been buried for the past 2 seasons at Georgia, and he's just got about 500 yards in 2 years. Now we'll see if he can have an impact in Austin. Then at tight end, it's reasonable to think that JT Sanders will probably be the top guy in the country at his position. He had 600 yards and 5 touchdowns last season. season. Then at running back, obviously Bijan is gone, but Texas has a new absolute stud in the backfield, CJ Baxter. He was the #1 running back in the 2023 recruiting class, and he should be really damn good as a true freshman. And lucky for him and Ewers, the offensive line should also be pretty good, most notably tackle Kelvin Banks. Texas definitely doesn't have as much experience on the defensive side of the ball as they do on the offense. I think the linebackers are probably going to be their best unit. Jalen Ford is back. He was the Longhorns' leading tackler with 119 last year. Plus, he had 4 interceptions and 2 sacks. But Anthony Hill should be worth keeping an eye on. He was the top linebacker in the 2023 class, and there's the belief that he can come in and contribute day one. Now, if the linebackers aren't the best, it'll be the defensive line. Junior Byron Murphy and redshirt senior Tavondre Sweat will be the 2 bigger names to watch. They're both experienced upperclassmen and should be causing hell in the trenches for the Longhorns. At defensive back, there's 2 guys that I think you should really watch, and that's Jahdae Barron and Ryan Watts. Barron is a rising senior and plays nickel. He was good last season and led all DBs in the Power 5 in stops. Then Watts is probably the best corner on the roster. He was also good last year with 3 passes defended, a pick, and 35 tackles, and what was his first year in Austin after he transferred from Ohio State. Texas is a big name brand. They matter, and that's a big reason why they're moving to the SEC. Starting in 2024, both Texas and Oklahoma will be making the jump to the SEC. All the conference realignment shit has been a real mess, but Texas is now going to get more revenue and probably more exposure because of it. And you know what? It's perfect timing. Depending on what happens with Quinn Ewers, with him potentially going to the draft or even transferring, Texas has a new shiny toy at quarterback that fans can't wait to see: Arch Manning. The hype behind a young dude that has yet to see the field in a college football game is sky high. I've never really seen anything like it. Everyone wants to see him play. I mean, including me. But when even is a realistic timeline for that to happen? Well, Quinn Ewers did get injured last season, and when he did, the backup came in. That probably doesn't come to a shock to anybody. So if Ewers does get hurt, Austin will erupt. But it's not that simple. Everyone wants to see him play. He was a #1 player in the 2023 recruiting class, and now we have to wait. There was the hope that he maybe play in week 1 versus Rice. The Longhorns won with ease, 37-10, and Quinn Ewers looked really good, going 19 of 30 for 260 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he even rushed for a touchdown too. As expected, Xavier Worthy was the one that had 90 yards as well. Texas looked good, and it got to the point where Ewers really didn't even need to be in the game anymore. So they pulled him for Malik Murphy. He's the technical backup behind Ewers. He was a 4-star recruit in the 2022 recruiting class and ended up redshirting as a freshman while he rehabbed an ankle injury. He actually played pretty well in Texas's spring game, 9 of 13, 165 yards, and a touchdown. He got some offers to transfer, but decided to stay put at Texas. For now, he's the guy behind Ewers. I do think that will eventually change, but it's really a matter of when at this point. It's important to remember that Arch Manning is literally 18 years old. If you want to feel old, dude was born in 2005. He's young and probably needs time to sit for a minute. It's also worth remembering that his uncles didn't start off the rip either. Eli Manning redshirted and then didn't play much the following season either. Then Peyton Manning had to wait his turn as a true freshman at Tennessee. It seems to be the Manning way apparently. I don't know how long it's going to take for Arch Manning to finally get the nod, but I can promise you this: if you think the hype around Texas is big now, wait until Arch Manning is the starting quarterback.